The Conjuring universe stands as one of the most successful and terrifying horror franchises in modern cinema history. This cinematic saga revolves around the heavily dramatized real-life case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren, a married couple who worked as paranormal investigators and demonologists during the latter half of the 20th century. The overarching narrative functions as an interconnected web of supernatural terror, spanning multiple decades and distinct haunted locations. The heart of the entire franchise is anchored by the mainline films, which specifically chronicle the most famous and harrowing investigations undertaken by the couple. These include the terrifying haunting of a Rhode Island farmhouse and the notorious supernatural disturbances experienced by a family in London. Alongside these central stories, the saga features a massive network of spin-off films that flesh out the origins of the cursed artifacts kept locked away in the investigator's private occult museum. These spin-offs detail the historical backstories of malevolent forces like a possessed vintage doll and an ancient demonic entity that takes the physical form of a sinister nun. While the films were released out of chronological order to build theatrical suspense, the complete timeline actually covers many years of haunting lore, stretching from the 1950s all the way into the 1980s. The saga has captured global audiences by blending traditional haunted house tropes with intense religious dread and strong emotional themes centered on family bonds and spiritual faith. Audiences can choose to watch the entire collection either by release date to see how the franchise grew or in chronological order to follow the supernatural history from its very beginning. The formulaic structure of these films can make the viewing experience feel like a tedious exercise in predictability. Every installment follows a rigid blueprint where an unsuspecting family moves into an isolated home, experiences escalating paranormal disturbances, and eventually calls upon external spiritual help to resolve the crisis. Because the narrative beats are so strictly mapped out, there is rarely any room for genuine surprise or subversion of genre expectations. You are likely left feeling bored because you can accurately anticipate exactly when the characters will make poor choices and when the story will transition into its chaotic final act. This repetitive nature completely drains the story of stakes and robs the narrative of any real tension. True suspense relies on the terrifying anxiety of the unknown, but this franchise offers a world where the rules of engagement are always identical. The conflict never morphs into something unexpected, and the heroes rarely face consequences that permanently alter the status quo. Walking into a movie theater already knowing the entire trajectory of the plot kills the element of discovery, turning a supposed thriller into a mundane checklist of expected events. The heavy reliance on jump scares further diminishes the artistic quality of the films by substituting genuine psychological dread with cheap physiological startles. These movies frequently employ the classic quiet loud dynamic, where the audio drops out completely right before a demonic entity screams directly into the camera lens. This tactic does not actually terrify the mind. It merely triggers a basic human survival reflex to sudden, deafening noises. If you appreciate horror that lingers in your thoughts long after the credits roll, these fleeting jolts can feel incredibly manipulative and unearned. Furthermore, this constant barrage of sensory shocks quickly leads to viewer fatigue rather than sustained engagement. When a film relies on the same trick of a slamming door or a sudden shadow popping into the frame every 10 minutes, the brain becomes desensitized to the rhythm. What was meant to be a terrifying climax instead becomes an exhausting chore as you brace yourself for yet another predictable audio spike. This superficial approach to scaring an audience often indicates a lack of confidence in the underlying story's ability to disturb on a deeper, more conceptual level. The mainstream polish of the production also strips away the raw, gritty atmosphere that defines the most effective entries in the horror genre. Everything on screen looks meticulously staged, perfectly lit, and heavily processed to appeal to the widest possible global audience. The cinematography is slick and beautiful, which stands in direct contrast to the ugly, chaotic, and dirty reality that a true demonic haunting would presumably embody. This high-budget sheen constantly reminds you that you are watching a heavily manufactured Hollywood product rather than a dangerous piece of cinema. This clean aesthetic choices ultimately create a distinct emotional detachment between the audience and the terror occurring on screen. When the haunted houses look like pristine, expertly designed movie sets, the sense of immersion is broken, and the danger feels entirely artificial. The polished visuals make it impossible to suspend your disbelief because the grit, grime, and unpredictability of real life are entirely absent. Instead of feeling trapped in a claustrophobic nightmare with the characters, you are always acutely aware of the massive crew standing just outside the camera frame. Additionally, this commercialized approach demands safe, digestible resolutions that tie up every single narrative thread in a neat little bow. Mainstream studio horror is designed to send audiences home feeling comforted, which is why these films almost always conclude with a triumphant victory for the forces of good. This sanitization of evil prevents the movies from exploring truly bleak, hopeless, or challenging thematic territory. If you prefer stories that leave you feeling deeply unsettled and questioning the safety of the world, these tidy endings will always feel unsatisfyingly sanitized. Ultimately, the combination of these three elements transforms what should be a terrifying cinematic journey into a highly calculated corporate product. When a film marries a predictable script with superficial scare tactics and a glossy, safe presentation, it loses the soul of what makes horror artful. You likely find these movies unappealing because they prioritize mass market consumption and reliable box office returns over artistic risk and genuine atmospheric terror. They are built for comfort and mass appeal, which is the exact opposite of what a truly haunting experience should be.